when I first started doing my version of community radio and news you're not supposed to know and that sort of thing. I did it at KAZI in Austin, and I always had a little script that I read from. And as long as I didn't try to read too many things too quickly, I did all right because everything was arranged right there on the page as I went along. And since I've tried to go video, I've tried not to rely as much on a script right there in front of me. But that script was great because when you're doing radio, you're doing theater of the mind. They can't see you at all. So you don't have to worry about your facial expressions or even whether you're upside down. You can do it any way you like. And as long as you maintain the narrative, it works, for radio. Well, this ain't radio, which gets me around. That's my excuse. That and I'm getting old and I'm on a lot of medications. And when I was talking 2 weeks ago, I made a couple of errors. The problem is I'm trying to do things off the cuff. I'm just not used to it. And I called Blackstone Black Rock. So sorry to Black Rock, whatever that is. Sounds like maybe a cafe or something. They did not cause the housing crisis. Blackstone is very much a part of it. And they should be broken up. And it's ridiculous that holding companies of that size are able to affect the overall level of, they're able to take so much housing off the market and hold it and then cruelly increase. They increase their rents nationwide across the board. They know that they can. And they have set the tone for real estate generally. They and other large investors. There are several other, I could go look them up, I suppose. There's just a handful of very large investors that have billions to spend, and they buy up houses with the intention of renting them out or converting them so that they can be rented out, or even tearing them down and putting up a condo that can be rented out. But they're very aware that they can make more money by renting fewer places at a higher price, of course. And they would argue, well, this is the best for my investors, and we are such geniuses. Of course, they're geniuses. We always hear that as they congratulate themselves in various ways. And that gives them way too much power. And we cannot address them simply by individually saying, oh, I'm just going to have to try harder to find a place that has a reasonable mortgage or a reasonable rent. That can't be done. And the humanitarian crisis is immediate. It's just as immediate, if not as severe, as the bombing of Gaza. And it is killing people across the United States. And it's also just making people absolutely miserable to the point that they don't take care of themselves and they die of exposure, which is just the saddest thing in the world. It's no way to live. And I demand that we confront capitalism to the degree, at the very least, my minimum for dealing with capitalism. I don't expect an immediate revolution, but we at least have to recognize its cruelest points and regulate it. And that means that could be various things. I think the easiest thing to do, it would just absolutely infuriate Blackstone. The easiest thing would just be put up big Stalinist blocks of apartments, and golly, there's a calico cat. I'm easily distracted. Just put we know how to put up those giant apartments, and we can make them so that they're not, horrible Stalinist blocks. I'm just joking about that, since the first thing, the conservatives will say in stopping it and standing with rich people, which is what suck-ups do, is they'll say, oh, it's going to be like Stalin, it's communism. Oh, so what? Just build the apartments, and you don't have to shove people in them or demand that they be there. What happens is you put up some decent places, and people who can't afford fancy rent will go there. And that will take the pressure off the market that Blackstone and companies have put there. Easy, cheap. It's relatively cheap. And this is how the places that have ended the houselessness crisis have ended it. Now we have an additional problem, which is we created a permanent lumpen proletariat in the United States. We who were against Reagan way back when, I realize I'm repeating myself to those of you who watch this thing a lot. And good morning, Jabara. We who screamed against Reagan easily predicted this. We take away education. You put the fox in the hen house in terms of regulation, like, famously James Watt in Interior, Ann Gorsuch in the EPA, and on and on and on. And you're going to corrupt the entire society, and you're going to create a permanent lumpen proletariat. Well, here they are. And we have all these movies that make metaphoric reference to it. Like in the 50s, we had metaphoric reference to the invading Chinese, which terrified the United States. They thought, they had defeated the Germans, defeated the Japanese, and they thought that they could easily defeat the Chinese in Korea. No. They kicked our asses right down to the sea, and were not pushed back except with an additional invasion and tremendous effort and loss of life by the United States. And to this day, that war is not officially ended. China turned out to be quite impressive. Commies are not. So here we are. We're in a corrupt society, and that brings me around to talking about the first item. And I think I'll just go ahead and launch into the first item, since it was largely my research last night, and because I have pages printed that I want to share with you. I want to talk about the situation with H5N1. H5N1 is also known as influenza A. It's bird flu. And it is, as you may have read, as you may have heard, it is in the cattle, that are passed here and there in trucks across the United States, either to increase herds or to go straight to the slaughterhouse. And Ozzy says Miguel, in case you're wondering. And so far, the H5N1 that has mutated to the point that it can infect cattle has only, all that we know is that it gave pink eye to one processor. So it has not mutated from its cattle form to human form. But I want to argue that it's in the perfect position now to mutate to human form. And this is because of the corruption of the regulatory capture that I was talking about before. I want to talk about, it's the USDA and the FDA that are in charge of this. By the way, this is Now Bridge to a Better World. I'm Teresa Mitchell.
It was almost like a cold open. I was looking at. I'm Ani.
And that's Ani. And I want to talk about the corruption of the USDA and the FDA, and why I am not confident that they can deal with this situation. For example, right now the USDA has issued some guidelines, and they are not calling for the culling of entire herds as they have for chicken. Here's what they put out: mandatory testing for interstate movement of dairy cattle. So they're not going to test your cattle unless you move them. Prior to interstate movement, dairy cattle are required to receive a negative test for influenza A, referring to H1N1, at an approved National Animal Health Laboratory Network laboratory. Owners of herds in which dairy cattle test positive for interstate movement will be required to provide epidemiological information, including animal movement tracing. Dairy cattle moving interstate must adhere to conditions specified by APHIS. And in this context, APHIS refers to the USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. Ozzy, I can't help you right now. I know it's a sad world. As will be described in forthcoming guidance, they write, these steps will be immediately required for lactating dairy cattle, while these requirements for other classes of dairy cattle will be based on scientific factors concerning the virus and its evolving risk profile. Now, I want to say, when they put out those guidelines, they knew that H5N1 was being found in milk across many states. And they were doing it with a PCR test, a reactivity test, and they did not know at the time they put out the guidelines that, as I mentioned, were merely for movement of cattle, whether the virus was live. What they said instead was, pasteurization normally takes care of these things. So this is the USDA. This is the same USDA that was criticized in the publication Beyond Pesticides in January 2020. They write, continuing a trend well established by prior Republican and Democratic administrations, the 5 new members recently reported by a USDA secretary to the National Organic Standards Board all have a current or past relationship with the industry's major lobby group, the Organic Trade Association. Over the past decade, Big Food has consolidated ownership of most of the largest and best-known organic brands. At the same time, many have criticized USDA for stacking the board. There are many such articles, and we can go back.
Did you just say Big Food?
Big Food.
Big Food. Okay.
It's really Big Food these
I
days.
believe you.
Now, speaking of their inspectors, as of March 2019, up to 1 in every 7 federally funded meat and poultry inspection positions were sitting vacant. They don't have enough inspectors, a total of nearly 700 nationwide. The shortage has created situations in which some inspectors are forced to cover double and triple the number of meat processing plants for which they would be normally scheduled. In some cases, facilities go entire shifts without supervision from consumer safety inspectors who enforce important sanitation procedures, policies, oversee facilities' food safety plans, and the production of processed meat products. There was a story I read about an inspector who was pregnant, who was being given double and triple shifts to the point that her coworkers were saying to management, "Hey, are you trying to force a bad outcome with her pregnancy? Are you trying to kill her?" That's how short-handed they are. And so what happened with H5N1 in cows was cows had indigestion, quoting Rhonda Brooks' article. The first clinical symptom Peterson saw was that cows had indigestion. They had manure that wasn't well digested, manure with particles of feed in it. As she checked more cows and talked with colleagues, more information came to light, and she began to identify recurring symptoms: thick colostrum-like milk, lesions on cow vulvas, high temperatures, respiratory distress, a drop in feed consumption, and a corresponding lack of rumination. This is from a veterinary publication. This is not from the USDA. And as a matter of fact, much of what we know was provided by an epidemiologist for Ohio State, who took it on himself to go around and collect samples, not as part of a regulatory effort. He collected 50-something samples. No, he collected much more than that and found 53 samples of milk that were reactive to H5N1. And he is the reason that we're talking about it today. The USDA and the FDA reacted to the fact that he had effectively blown the whistle. And it's a scary situation because they are not stopping the spread of H5N1 in cattle. They are not calling for a cull. And Americans drink a great deal of milk and eat a great deal of beef. And there's been no effort to completely sanitize and start over, as should be done, with a threat as gigantic as H5N1. Because the thing about H5N1 bird flu is that it has found its way into various mammal populations, everything from seals to penguins, and it kills half the population. Kills half, sometimes 40%, usually 50%. This is not something that we can afford to risk making its way into the human population or creating a version of itself and be transmitted human to human. And there's absolutely nothing keeping it from doing so because it has mutated to every other large animal group. And guess who the largest animal group on the planet is when it comes to megafauna? It's us.
Megafauna. I was going to say it's, I believe, ants or termites, but megafauna.
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 I think that would be a good middle name. Teresa Megafauna Mitchell. Yeah. So let me lay this on you. This is from Helen Branswell, writing in it grayed out. It's called Stat News. Stat News is the source of this.
Well,
testing conducted by the. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Testing conducted by the FDA on pasteurized commercially purchased milk has found genetic evidence of the H5N1 bird flu virus. The agency confirmed that Tuesday, but the testing done by polymerase chain reaction, or PCR, that's what it stands for, polymerase, probably won't remember that, cannot distinguish between live virus or fragments of viruses that could have been killed by the pasteurization process. Now, another thing is that the New York Times did a version of this and said that they had determined that there was no live virus. They had not done that at the time of that article. They have been trying to culture it. It's still in the process. And the latest news is that there is no live virus in the cultures. Good news. But they never stopped the milk going out. They never looked after I don't know where to start.
Well, you're starting.
This is so corrupt. I mean, so corrupt. We've already seen this under the Trump administration. So corrupt that they'll kill 1 million people. Yeah, sure. That's the government that we live under, and it's not
And
changing.
that we've lived under since Reagan.
Yeah,
As you're talking about, the deregulations, right?
right.
Yeah, I mean this pattern has been ongoing, for most of my life, and why? It's because we're supposed to look out for ourselves. Government's supposed to be tiny, tiny.
Oh yeah, we got to drown it in a bathtub. That's how we will be free. Meaning we, in this case, meaning the thousandth of 1%.
The market regulates itself. Why, if the milk is tainted and we all die, no one will buy the milk. So there.
You can have your own. If you're Elon Musk, you can have your own.
So I don't mean to totally derail you. I do want to say that there is an opinion piece that came out on Wednesday in the New York Times that actually does echo a lot of what you're saying. I think you probably haven't seen it yet. And you are definitely, you're taking it further, but I want to say that there are, this week is the week that we've actually seen this jump from Teresa's been warning all of her friends and family about it to, some folks are starting to get kind of concerned nationally.
Well, I was actually talking about the New York Times article, and they have a grave error in that they claim that the PCR tests show that the virus is not live. The FDA said no such thing. And they were simply, they were either making a grave and substantial error right away, or they were standing for big beef. And, given the history of, Judith Miller and, Stephen Kinsey, I think they were standing for big beef. So,
well, this is likely. I'm saying that there's there's a think piece.
There's a subsequent article.
There's an opinion piece that came out that I think is more in line with what you're saying. Carry on.
And today, this very morning, more pasteurization testing has been done. And it actually turns out that the H5N1 in milk is more resistant to heat than they would have guessed. And so testing is ongoing. And fortunately, people are not dying in scads. And that's because it hasn't created a human form. But I would argue it is now in the perfect position as it spreads due to the corruption of our captured regulatory agencies, our post-Reagan agencies. It will be in the entire, it's in most, I don't know if it's in most, it's in a huge portion of the cattle herd in the United States. It will be in the entire herd, or mostly, within a year. It will continue to mutate, and sometime it's going to be next month or next year or 27 months from now, however long it takes. It's going to probably not that long because it's been mutating much more quickly in other herds of animals. There will be an outbreak of human-to-human H5N1, and we'll just see how many of us die. Thanks a lot, USDA, FDA, and all you fucking Republicans who think that's a great idea and how to be. Thus endeth the lesson. So, and I also wanted to talk about the Supreme Court, speaking of corruption, saying that it is worthwhile and they need to, scratch their heads. This is me being the Supreme Court. They need to scratch their heads and think, should a president be liable for prosecution for criminal acts? How could that possibly be a question? How can that not be a disingenuous stance? I think that they should be embarrassed at the level of corruption that they reveal in asking that at all, because the whole idea of having a secular constitution is that the king we don't have a king. We don't have someone who is put there by God, as many people are saying of Trump. We don't have someone who cannot be addressed, as was the problem before the Magna Carta. We don't have a king because that invites corruption. Absolute power invites absolute corruption. So we have rule of law, and we don't have a king. And it's just so alarming that that the Supreme Court is, what they're doing at this point is kind of hedging on it and saying, oh, well, maybe there's official acts that would be distinguished from personal acts. And we need to have a whole nother court session, starting with the district court, to determine what's official and what's personal. And this is silly delaying tactics, which allow Trump to go to the nomination and to the next election without being called out on the fact that he tried to destroy democracy the last time he was in office. It's as simple as that. They know it. They are simping for Trump. And is that the word simping? They're
Yeah, I think so. I think we can say that.
they're in the tank for Trump. That's another way to say it. And
They're in his court. They're in his corner. They're in his pocket. They're in his, I don't know.
yeah, pockets. Ugh. Anyway, so I mean, the things they might as well say, oh well, we need to determine whether he could be indicted for criminal acts while the moon is waxing or when the moon is waning, because when the moon is waning, you can't see as well at night, and blah blah blah. These are ridiculous arguments, is my point.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about overturning at least 800 years of Western law, right? That we know that that no person is above the law in this country. Anyone who has passed freshman high school civics classes can tell you that this is one of the things that makes America great, that no person is above the law.
And
it never said asterisk, except maybe if some president in the future might claim this ridiculous notion, we'll ponder it. It never said that.
Yeah, it's an absurdity. I mean, Roberts is saying that, well, what if Roosevelt could have been called out for the decision to intern Japanese American citizens? Well, maybe he should have been, but it was a war situation. It was a situation in which several nations were entering what was literally a race war, a race for a war for racial supremacy. And those were different times, weren't they? But
I would also point out that I guess, could have been, right? Yeah. No one stopped somebody from doing that.
And so we had the horror of the internment.
We did. And this is a bad thing.
It's a bad thing,
to say the least. No, I mean, it's a horrible stain in our history of, other horrible colonialist stains of racist acts. But I digress. What I'm trying to say here is that he was able, I believe Trump's argument is a president would be paralyzed if they thought that they would be subjected to criminal prosecution for potentially criminal acts. But the point is, for over 200 years, well, okay, 100 and whatever years of the Constitutional.
240 since the 1883 Constitution was approved. 241.
Okay. Yes, for over 200 years. That we are, well, that's not 200. Anyway, I'll digress from the math at this
math
moment.
On the fly. Oh, what could go wrong?
I think you didn't calculate, but a long time.
Carry the one.
And what we're saying is, if no president has felt paralyzed before Trump, why would Trump feel paralyzed? Could it be because he's in fact doing downright criminal acts that have nothing to do with his office?
Every general, every governor, I mean, even Tricky Dick expected to be busted. That's why he was pardoned.
Right. And I think that the fact that we had a president pardon Tricky Dick from criminal wrongdoing, should he have done any, though, I mean, it was all sort of, that pardon was very, how do we say, should he have done something? He didn't actually, maybe he did, maybe, but he's fine. So these are, I think, good precedents to show that, in fact, the president is, in fact, still ruled by the same law of this land.
Preceding presidents. Well, I mean, I feel too emotionally that the Republican Party and the Supreme Court are at this point saying, oh, fuck all this democracy and rule of law shit. It's just a way of hedging in white men. Get out of our fucking way. That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
And they have their favorite police are doing exactly that. But ironically, I thought at University of Texas, by shoving down a Fox News cameraman, it's like the first person that they brutalize is a Fox cameraman, because they're blind with rage at this point. And we've got to hedge. We got to hedge. We got to hedge these people in the old sense of hedge. We've got to be good hedge witches and try to heal the madness that is teeming in the heads of white men who think that they're going to lose everything. They're not going to lose everything. They are going to lose absolute hegemony. And they've always had that, and it's frightening. It's a big void. It's a zero to them. They don't know what it's going to be like.
I always
white
have
guys,
this idea.
it's not going to be so bad. It's going to be kind of interesting, really.
I have this idea that they always feel this kind of terror because they know somehow deep in their bones that their hegemony, their dominance is illegitimate. And I think they fear the repercussions of that.
Yep. Answering for that could be hard.
Yeah. And, if everyone else is allowed to act like they have, then how are they going to be treated?
Yeah, and if we face it head on and look at what really has happened and what is going on, and all the well-intended white guys out there, it's not going to be bad. It's going to be, we're all going to, we're going to designate some money for reparations, get the reparations done. Society will be somewhat better. It's not the end of the world.
In fact, it's the beginning of a good one.
Yeah.
Or at least part of what it will take to begin a new one. There's a lot going on, and in fact, it is fairly horrific this week as we are juggling the ideas of a new pandemic with the outright mockery that is the SCOTUS taking up this question, and it's a lot to take in. You got more?
No, actually.
So
I'm all talked out.
I'm gonna pivot. I'm going to pivot to the fact that it's a lot to take in, and next week is May Day. And May Day is a holiday that is, I got to admit, it's probably my favorite time of year because, in fact, we are looking at a time when the greening of the earth, the renewal of life is happening around us. We are invited to partake in pleasures, in feeling connection with each other, in doing what needs to be done to bolster the community, to weave our community together, as was part of the symbology of dancing the maypole, where you had basically a fertility ritual that included the weaving of ribbons as the dancers went in both directions around the poles, forming two circles, weaving the ties of community together from the ribbons and garlands hanging from the pole, from the maypole. And it's time to do that weaving, to face dire circumstances as we have in this country for quite some time now, right? Especially, I'm going to say this country has never really had, it's founded in genocide and built by slave labor and indentured servants. This country has never really had a heyday that I want to return to. But I do want us to move forward together as comrades, as equals, to build this world anew, to pay attention to the greening of this earth and to the life force that this earth has, to pay attention to the needs that we have with each other, needs of the heart and spirit, as well as our physical community, feeding each other and nourishing each other in so many ways. We have to use our analysis and figure out a new path, right? We need each other in a way that moves us forward out of this horror that is so in our face this week. So as we look at May Day next week, this is a holiday that is not only deeply spiritually meaningful for those of us who base our spirituality in the earth. This is the celebration of the fruitfulness of the earth, and also just, again, encouraging us to experience the pleasure of our senses with each other in this moment, and having that fuel us to go on and face the hardships we need to face. That said, it's also the holiday of workers around the world. This is the Labor Day of the rest of the world. The US decided that's a little too radical, a little too steeped in anarcho-communism.
Always been afraid of that.
And so we're going to put our rather watered down Labor Day in September. The rest of the world celebrates workers on May 1st. And so we got the holiday of labor, the holiday of renewal and pleasure. And we also have a good anarchist history thrown in for the making. And this means, in fact, celebrate. Find your friends and your family and celebrate. We need to celebrate to fuel ourselves and move on into the very challenging yet satisfying work of building the world anew. Because this one is, well, how do we say, falling apart. For 25 years, I did a talk show on cable community radio called Positively Revolting, and the tagline for that show was "Decrying the ashes of the old world while we forge the new one together." And I think that is, in fact, where my head is at right now. We decry this world that passes away as we work together to bring in the new. And with that, allow me to turn our attention to our tarot cards the week.
Oh, I can see them with my new glasses.
Yay!
Yay.
Hi, it's
Hi,
me.
I'm over here.
Teresa is very happy
Same
that
old
she can
frame.
see again.
New glasses.
Right. So what do we have here? We have
Ooh.
we've been tending to tie ourselves up with our own complicating issues. Oftentimes we find that we paint ourselves into corners and uh, kind of restrain ourselves in ways that don't really benefit us. This can be sort of reacting to situations out of our shadow selves, right?
Metaphorically rolling in the toilet paper.
This is, well, the toilet paper symbolizes bonds, right? He's in traditional tarot. This looks like a woman standing bound with her hands behind her back and encircled by 8 swords.
Ooh.
This looks like a cat who is, in fact, tied himself up with toilet paper.
It's gonna get yelled
Yeah.
at.
So, the binding is there. The lesson of the card is that we just need to break through those bonds to see things truly as they are. And then we get to of uh, the 10 of Pentacles. And we've seen this before recently. This is a card that speaks to us of having done a lot of hard work of building our family, building our communities, and that they have, in fact, it's paying off. And when I say paying off, I don't mean ka-ching. I mean that we have the satisfaction of belonging, that we nourish each other and nurture each other, that we celebrate together. We've done a lot of hard work and we get the good kibble, I believe is actually the symbol of this particular card. We've worked hard for our treats and now we get them, and they're not just treats, they're treats shared with friends and family. And we also have the Wheel of Fortune. Now the Wheel of Fortune talks about fate and how things can change on a dime, how in fact the world is in motion, all possibilities are at play. And so we don't know really how things are ending up. We don't have answers about SCOTUS. We don't have answers about the presidency. We don't know how bird flu may affect us all in the near future. We don't know if it will affect us in the near future. We don't know a whole lot of stuff, but what we know is our bonds of community, because we've built them and made them strong ourselves, right? So that carries us through. The wheel is in motion. Fate plays a hand. When that card comes up, it's really about fate coming in and playing a hand. It also lets us know that things are constantly in flow. If you're feeling like you're at the bottom, know that things will improve. If you're feeling like you're at the top, know that that doesn't stay there and last forever. So we have to continue to work on the basics. And the basics are the bonds of community and working towards sustainability in our lives and in the world. And that's what I have for this reading a few days before May Day. on this year, 2024. I do want to let folks know that we will be out next week because we are going to be celebrating May Day. And we will be just out and about for a couple of days, not really tuned in so much.
I'm thinking Maypole.
Not really tuned in so much to the electronic worlds. But we do wish you a beautiful week, a wonderful May Day, and we'll see you in about 2 weeks, if not before, with some special broadcast somewhere. Which brings me to, if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe now and hit that notification bell so that you'll know when we do whatever it is we do.
Yes, help spread our attitude. Well, our love goes out to you this May Day and to all of the ships at sea, which we'll be watching from the shore, possibly, at least part of the time.
All right, cheers.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Auf Wiedersehen. Good night.